Hey guys, and welcome back to Tennis 360 Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things tennis. My name's Anthony Hirsch.
And I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
Welcome back to the podcast. So today we're going to preview mostly the ATP Finals because we just had the ATP Finals happen. It was an exciting tournament with lots of three-setters, but Djokovic at the end of the tournament prevailed with some really one-sided straight sets matches over Alcaraz and Sinner, winning 6-3, 6-2 versus Alcaraz, and then 6-3, 6-3 versus Jannik, showing kind of the next gen, I think, what's up a little bit. And what did you think about all of that?
Yeah, well, classic Novak saved his best tennis for last, as we've come used to with him in recent years. When the pressure gets hot, Novak turns up, and I think it's an extremely tough ask to beat Djokovic, back to back in 1 week. So I kind of always felt going into the final that this would be a tough one for Sinner. Djokovic is so good at learning from his past mistakes and making adjustments and being intentional about what he needs to do differently the next time he comes out on court. And I think the earlier round robin match that they played was some of Sinner's highest level. So to even kind of ask him to reach that again a second time in 1 week and ask him to possibly make adjustments and react to the fact that Djokovic is going to come to this match with a different mindset and a different approach, even with the crowd on his side, I just felt like it was Djokovic's moment and his match, and we'll talk about it more in depth, but it was some of the best tennis we've seen from him all year, and that in itself is so impressive.
Yeah, well, it might be too much to ask for Sinner to beat Djokovic twice in 1 week, something that nobody has ever done before. Nobody's ever beaten any Big Three member in 1 week. I guess the only time it would happen would be either here or at Davis Cup, but either way, it was too tough to ask, and especially Sinner playing the biggest final of his career to that point, which is just so tough to ask from Jannik. And I felt like the thing that Djokovic adjusted on was after the on-court interview, the initial thing that Novak said was, I need to step up and play more aggressive in the big moments. I let Jannik take charge and be aggressive and dictate. Djokovic probably wasn't used to a young player stepping up and dictating and being mentally solid in those big moments, but that's kind of what Jannik showed in the round robin. And it went to a third set tiebreaker. He went up 5-love in the tiebreaker, but it just didn't really happen this week. And Novak's changes was he played super aggressive. He played way more aggressive than he did in his first match, and it showed on the serve as well. At one point, he won 28 out of 30 points on serve. He was hitting crazy aces. It was a really good performance from Novak, pretty much pitch perfect. And I did feel like maybe Jannik was a little bit nervous or was playing a little bit too far behind the baseline, not really taking his chances. But either way, Novak played. I don't know how they calculate it, but I saw that they gave him a 9.75 out of 10 with the tennis rating thing, with the tennis rating system. So it was a good performance from Novak. And again, just like last year, capping off the season with a bit of a statement, I'm still here and I'm still going to be winning a lot next year as well. Or that's what it seems like at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think let's get into the serve, because to me, I would say that was probably the biggest difference today. Sinner has been serving so well in this kind of post-US Open swing. I think he's been serving some of the best numbers we've seen from him in his career so far. But I think what we've talked about a couple of times on the podcast is actually how much Djokovic's serve has, stepped up another level this year and has become even more effective. And today it was just unbelievable. I think he had 13 aces for the day. And then giving you guys kind of some more stats from that, he had a 28% ace rate in this match. So for context, the tour leader is Hurkacz. She has a tour average for the season of 17%. And we think of him as, an elite server. So to serve an ace rate of 28% in the finals of the, ATP Finals is ridiculous. He also had 70% first serves in versus Sinner's 66. But what was so impressive of that 70% is that Novak won 91% of points behind that. So Sinner only won 9% of points when he was returning. And as a returner that is just so incredibly frustrating. He had a couple opportunities in the second set to get a break and get back in, but Djokovic was just so clutch on the serves and was hitting his spots so well. You know, even when he wasn't hitting aces, he was reading Sinner's return position so well that he was just kind of taking the racket out of Sinner's hands in terms of giving him the opportunity to dictate when Djokovic was serving. And I think that plays into the point that you just talked about of Djokovic just kind of being ultra aggressive from the get-go, and all of that stemming from an absolutely huge serving day.
Yeah, he's become so reliable on the serve. It was post like 2018, obviously, when Ivanisevic came on, but he's just perfected it, not just post 2018, but like you said, this year, I feel like it's the best it's ever been. And it's the placement he constantly gets on serve when he's stepping up to the line. He's pretty much hits it right to the lines. Not the fastest serve, but he can place it wherever, and it's so tough to read a serve as well, which I think is like the main thing. And part of the big improvements I made, say, 2011 was the serve, because the serve was really a weakness for him before that year, and then he was double faulting a lot. So the placements and the difficulty to read it was what kind of improved the serve. And then recently, I think he's serving about as quick as he's ever served that serve as well. Like he's sometimes getting to 125 plus, 130 plus, and it's only improving and improving. So yeah, it was a great serving day from Novak, and which is Novak served really well against Jannik in the round robin match too. I will say he served 20 aces in the round robin match and had a fantastic serving day, but Jannik was just playing unbelievable off return. I don't think we saw that same Jannik, but Novak's been returning, serving incredible all week. So
yeah, and I also think that, you know, it's not just the percentage of first serves in and the number of aces, but also the, as we say, kind of like the aggressiveness behind the serve. And I mean, I think he upped the forehand speeds again today. I mean, again, like we've spent most of the year praising Sinner, praising Alcaraz for how, you know, huge their forehand ground stroke is. And Djokovic was consistently hitting as big as Sinner, if not faster than Sinner off the forehand in both matches over this last week. And I think that, you know, again, like that's something that is a marginal improvement that Djokovic has made this year. Like we don't think of him as someone who has the biggest ground strokes, and here he is willing to step up behind the first serve, look for the +1 more often. I think one stat that really impressed me, which just shows, you know, how overall dominant he was today, is that he was better in every single category of rally. So 0 to 4 rallies, he won more points. 5 to 8 shot rallies, he won more points. 9+ shot rallies, he won more points. So across the board, he was finding ways to be more aggressive tactically than Sinner was at every single, you know, level of point, which is just ridiculous. Like I can't remember matches where you would see someone dominate across the board like that between a number 1 and number 3 or number 4 in the world. Like that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Well, obviously between all of those, the 0 to 4 shot rallies is the most impressive, because not just off the serve, but off the return, Jannik is so good, especially in returning second serve. But Novak made so many first serves in play that probably you didn't even get that many of those rallies where Jannik was just stepping in and attacking the return in that way. But yeah, it was really impressive all around. And I felt like one thing that was really impressive to me was I felt like Novak played tactically very differently in the semis and then to the final as well. I felt like actually against the match against Alcaraz, I felt like he was actually more playing into longer rallies, being able to play better rally tolerance, shot tolerance, and being willing to be more defensive, while Alcaraz was going a little bit more on the attack and actually trying to get some errors from Carlos. Which worked in a lot of ways. But against Sinner, he was just aggressive right from the get-go, and it was amazing to watch. He broke in the second game of the match, and from then on, it was just straightforward business from Djokovic, and there really wasn't much to say. Aside from Novak played out of his mind, and it was a very one-sided performance, because from the get-go, up until maybe a couple of service games in the second set, it felt like it wasn't a match, it was a performance. And it was a performance from Novak, once again, just showing that he's at the top of the game. And listen, with a performance like this, he wins his 98th title. He wins his 71st big title. He now leads the leaderboard in most ATP finals. He passes Federer. You just have to think he has every single record. Is he just going to keep going to next year as well? And how much more is he going to keep going?
Yeah, and add 400 weeks at number one to that list as well is a new record for him. I mean, every year he continues to find ways to improve, surpass these records, and he's slowly carving out a league of his own. And I think in his post-match press conference, someone asked him, what more can you do? And he said, win all 4 majors and the golden medal in Paris. So clearly he thinks he still has enough left in the tank to go for a golden slam.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this earlier because I wanted to ask you, like, how much money would you bet on that? Because some part of me kind of thought, with the way that he was sort of going for the calendar Grand Slam and the Golden Slam a couple years ago back in Tokyo, he obviously didn't do as well at the Olympics as he would have hoped, and then had that awful loss to Medvedev in the final of the US Open where he just kind of looked like he crumbled under the pressure. And a part of me sort of thinks, like, if you ever put Novak in the same situation again, you ever give him the same opportunity again, like, no way would he crumble a second time. But the other part of me thinks, 37, you want to win 4 majors, that middle, 3 between the French, Wimbledon, US Open, and add an Olympics in between. And you're trying to peak kind of at all of these. That feels like a huge ask. And then we're also not even considering the surface changes within that, because the Olympics will be on clay. So we're going from clay to grass to clay to hard. And so I'm curious, what, if you put a wager on it, how much would you bet?
Yeah, well, I was going to mention the same thing about the surface changes, because that is a lot of changing of different surfaces. And nobody's ever won the calendar year Grand Slam on 3 different surfaces. That still has not happened. Rod Laver won it twice back in the day, but that was not played on clay, grass, and hard courts. Novak would be going to be the first one. I would not put a big wager on that, but I also am not going to count it out from happening either, because Novak has gotten close. I would say even this year he got pretty close. He got to the 2 majors and the Wimbledon. 1 match away, 1 set away as well. Yeah, which is really what's crazy. If not for the swinging volley in that 5th set against Alcaraz, then maybe he would have taken it. I remember watching that point live, and it's a ridiculous thing to say, but I turned to my dad I was watching with at that time. I said, that might be the most important point in tennis history. It's like that miss, because Alcaraz gets first Wimbledon and Djokovic maybe misses out on calendar slam. But either way, I wouldn't bet on it, but also Djokovic is going to win more. After 2022, Novak's win in Turin, I thought, okay, well, he's kind of peaking here. I think he's going to kind of slow down next season. Nope, he didn't slow down. He didn't slow down whatsoever. I was wrong. I was wrong in that. Yeah. And then this year he won, and I was like, okay, it's going to depend on Djokovic. It's going to depend on Djokovic. His motivations are going to be massive going into next year as well, I think, especially with the Olympics. They're right in the middle of it. So I don't think he's slowing down. And in some ways, I think it's good for guys like Sinner and Alcaraz right now. I'm not going to say the same thing if he sticks around for 10 more years or whatever or something. But for these next 2 years being against Sinner and Alcaraz, it forces them. It doesn't just encourage them. It forces them to have to raise their game to match him to match the greatest player we've ever seen step onto the court. So I think it's going to raise the level of the next era that we see. People are talking, how good is this next era going to be? The more it intertwines with the Big 3 era, the higher the level we see of the next era. So even though the weight might be harder if you want to see newer blood in the mix, newer names in the mix for the Grand Slam champions, the longer we wait, the higher the level will probably rise, just because they're learning so much from Novak.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I mean, look, like, Father Time we'll get him at some point. We don't know when that will be, but as you say, before he passes the baton, he's raising the level of everybody else around him. And I think, as you say, that's super important for the future of the tour, to learn from somebody like him, to have lost to him in these types of finals and experience, what it's like playing against someone who you can be earlier in a week and then just becomes a completely different animal a couple of days later when, the pressure's really on and he really has to deliver. And he's leaving such a strong legacy for the sport and doing a lot to, I guess, mentor these guys too. I'm always impressed about how he speaks about them in press conferences, kind of, I guess, other players being candid about, that his kind of willingness to speak with players, like offer advice or input. He, I think they were talking about how a couple years ago when he played Sinner, their coach connected with him and Djokovic gave about 4 or 5 kind of talking points or things for Sinner to consider to improve. And, that you don't have to do that, but I think he understands, the role that he plays in tennis, and without Federer around and Nadal finishing things off in 2024, maybe he feels even more responsibility to help kind of, foster the next generation. And so while he's obviously still really hungry and keen to beat them and win, and I think there's this kind of extra motivation of like, I can still beat these young guys, and that feels pretty good. I think that his legacy and their trajectory or their career will not be forgotten, because it will have a huge impact and it will have raised their level for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Novak is amazing because he played in an era with also 2 other all-time greats, and yet he was able to come out with such, not just great stats, dominant stats for the last 12 years or so running. And I think it's a big thing for Alcaraz and Sinner to have such a big rival in the mix to push them to get better. And I hope that once Novak leaves, they also have rivals to push each other, like Rafa and Federer and Djokovic pushed each other. And I think it's going to be a really good era, but I think that so far we're not in the Alcaraz era, we're in the Djokovic era, and I think that we're all getting used to that fact. And Alcaraz and Alcaraz Sinner era is coming up, but I think that Djokovic right now is reigning supreme. And what's amazing is he's reigning supreme on all 3 surfaces. He won a major on all 3 surfaces this year, and also he's just absolutely dominant and perfecting his game. I mean, like I said, the serve was looking as good as today was one of the best serving performances I've ever seen Djokovic have. Watching it live, I couldn't believe I couldn't believe watching it. The net game's as good as ever. His forehand is looking fantastic, and his physicality probably not as good as 2015 in my opinion. But look, the guy's 36 and he's still sustaining an amazing physicality and athleticism. That's absolutely incredible for his age and really good for any player. He was an incredible athlete back in the day, and he's an incredible athlete now. And it might not be to the same extent, but it's good enough to be number 1 in the world, no doubt about it. And he's still going to be at the top of the tour next year as well, I think. But really good performances the last couple of matches.
And I think the other part with him is that he's just so much smarter than everybody else in terms of his training, his approach, the way he plans his calendar and figures out how he can peak at each of those moments. I mean, here's Alcaraz at 21 years old saying, I'm tired, or 20 years old, I'm tired. Like, and it's been a long season and I need to figure out a way for me to not feel like I have nothing left in the tank when I get to, the post US Open swing. And he kind of admits that. And, part of that is experience for Djokovic. He wasn't always this way, especially earlier on in his career. He wasn't as fit as he is today. But he's super smart about it too. He knows, maybe in a situation like this, it's not 5 sets, it's best of 3. So if I come out and I'm punching at a high level, like quickly, and, I can get out ahead, I don't need to sustain that for 3.5, 4 hours. I can get a match done in 2 hours if I play like this. And so I think he knows where he needs to adjust. He's willing to adapt his game to match where he is with his physicality. And that's where I think he's, managed to become the most elite athlete this sport has seen, and potentially one of the most elite athletes across all sports, because he is one of the smartest in his approach to, his craft at the end of the day. And that's why I think I could easily see him continuing to be challenging for slams and the world #1 ranking for another 3 years, because in the way that his conditions are now, you don't think that, oh my goodness, he's all of a sudden going to drop off majorly in his abilities unless he was to pick up, you know, a kind of serious injury that would keep him out for a longer period of time. But if he can stay healthy in that way, you sort of think, okay, there's a percentage decline each year, but it doesn't feel like it's significant enough right now for him to be like out of the picture in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I would agree, and also he cares so much about those records. He's moving every single move he makes. He's moving with a goal. He says it himself. He says, "I want to be the best player in history. I want these records. I want to keep breaking records. I want to be at the top of those stats." And having that clear kind of goal and motivation while he's already at the top is a very big thing for him. And he's dedicated in every part of the word, in every single aspect possible. Even when he's doing things perfectly, he says, "You know what? I want to keep working on this. I want to keep moving towards this. I might be the best player in the world. I want to be the best player ever. He's probably thinking about the next guy coming up who's going to try to break his records. Whatever he's thinking about, he's trying to fulfill his own potential. And it's really cool to see a guy working so hard at perfecting every single part of his game. And also it proves, one thing I like about Djokovic is that it proves that somebody so hardworking, so dedicated, and so mentally sharp and mentally tough is really what tennis is all about. You think about what tennis is, it's a sport of small margins. We all know that. Sometimes it's decided by a few points. And Djokovic hasn't done this the easy way. I mean, I know the last couple match semifinals and finals were straight sets wins against Sinner and Alcaraz. He hasn't done this the easy way. He's gone through so many tight matches throughout his whole career. It's amazing he's only lost 210 matches, because that's probably 500 or 600 matches less than matches he was close to losing. But yet he found a way to get through those matches. And that's what's amazing about Novak. He's found such a supreme mentality. And he said it himself. Everyone's good at hitting forehands. Everyone's good at hitting backhands, but it's the mental side that counts the most. And also, it's not the flashiest or the biggest hitter on the court, because Djokovic isn't the biggest hitter on the court. He's probably not the flashiest either. But what he is super effective, point in, point out. He tapers himself well. He treats his body. He thinks about every single aspect, and he just pushes every single thing that he possibly can towards his favor. And the hard work pays off, and the mental part of it kind of pays off. And that's kind of what I think about Novak. And I think I think next year is going to be another good year for Novak. I don't see a reason to think why it shouldn't be.
Yeah, he's the best problem solver in the game. I think there was some anecdote about Sinner's coach having Sinner watch Djokovic's matches, but having him watch the ones where Djokovic was close to losing or struggling, like not being able to play his best. And I think that's one thing that we can all associate with Djokovic, is that he can be playing his C game and still find a way to win. And that is ultimately, you know, why he is as successful as he is, because most players don't have an ability to drop several levels from their peak and still figure out a way to win, whether that's because they don't have the actual kind of skill set is one thing. I think most of it is really just the mental approach. The again, going back to kind of how smart he is, like how willing he is to kind of try something else, figure something else out, just like not give up. Like the guy just does not give up, and in ways that, you know, I don't think everybody can go to the wall the same way Djokovic can. And I don't think that even really has anything to do with somebody's motivation or, you know, how bad they want it. But, you know, sometimes you just have these people who just have these elite mentalities. They pop up, they're once in a generation type athletes, and that's what makes them special. And they're just willing to suffer more and go through more than anybody else is. And you know, he deserves all the success he's earned himself this year. Nothing's been handed to him. He's had challenges from folks, and yet he's continued to prevail and clearly be the best player on the men's tour. And yeah, I mean, as you said, it's just going to continue to be up to the next generation now. And I think we can kind of transition to speaking about some of the other matches in this tournament is that the future is bright. You know, Alcaraz, Sinner, and Rune, you know, just hitting their 20s or not even in them yet, are showing signs of being able to go toe-to-toe with the very best in the game right now. And tennis is a sport of fine margins, right? If they can adjust a couple of things, percentage points here and there, we're not talking about them being miles behind. But I think next season is poised to be pretty interesting. Becker has been confirmed now. He will stay on with Rune as his coach. I think we've seen progress with them working together already. We know what Alcaraz can do when he's fit and healthy. I'm sure he's going to be making adjustments in the off season and taking a look at his calendar to prepare better for next year. And here we have Sinner peaking post US Open in such an impressive way, managing to beat Medvedev 3 times in a row, a head-to-head that looked like for him was going to be a really difficult one. He's starting to turn the tables and change the script about what people expect of him in 2024. And so I think those 3 names, alongside some of the folks who maybe aren't, next gen, but who are in and around it, like your Medvedevs, like your Zverevs, and those guys who, also showed up this week and had pretty elite performances. So I think, separating Djokovic or this finals match out from that, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree, and it's hard not to agree. I mean, Medvedev, Sinner, and Alcaraz all had over 80% of their matches on the tour this year, which is just a remarkable number. Yeah, it's incredible numbers. Sinner, Rune, and Alcaraz all beat Djokovic in big events this year. Sinner beat Djokovic at this tournament, and he also had a chance to knock Djokovic out of the tournament against Rune, but he decided to put his put his all into the match. Which is, I want to ask you, do you have any thoughts about Sinner's, what some people would call Sinner deciding not to tank the match? Because it's an interesting topic that I think there's a lot to say about it. But to me, it comes down to the thing that he was there to me, it comes down to he was there to play a tennis match, and the game of tennis wins when it's played in fair spirit. And that's kind of what I would vouch for, because, listen, as much as people are saying, listen, Sinner should have tanked, he would have had all the hate in the world come at him had he done so. So it's an interesting question. But I want to ask you what you thought about it.
Yeah. So for me, I actually don't think tanking is like maybe as black and white as the debate came out to be this week. So, I would never expect a player of his caliber to go out and tank a match, as in not give, a full level of effort and not, show up for people that paid tickets, people in his home country. I don't think he would have ever had an attitude of like, I don't care, I don't want to win this match. Like, whatever happens, happens. I do think that one could approach this match with kind of saying, I'm going to keep it competitive until 4 or 5 games all in each set. And then I'm just going to see how it goes. And I feel like that's kind of like how Medvedev was a little bit against Alcaraz. Like, he threw in a couple strange loose service games at 4-all in both sets against Alcaraz. And that was a dead rubber match for him. And I did kind of get nervous watching Sinner in that second set when he was clutching his back a little bit. And I kind of thought, like that looks, like something you wouldn't want to pick up and maybe have to deal with post that match. So I kind of thought when he was touching his back a little bit, I thought maybe he would take his foot off the gas and just kind of go through his motions. I think there's also kind of another suggestion of like, if you have a dead rubber match like this, like, is that an opportunity to perhaps work on some things strategically that you wouldn't do in a match that counts for a lot? So, maybe it would have been an opportunity for him to practice the serve and volley a little bit more. Like, we didn't see kind of an out and out like strategy that he seemed to be trying to execute that maybe he wouldn't normally do. So I think, like, to me, if he had come in and kind of been like, hey, I'm clearly working on kind of doing 1 or 2 of these things strategically, and he loses the match because of that, I don't think that's tanking. I think if he can, it's all got to do with effort levels in that way. And so, I think it's also hard to know, a couple hours before before his match, it was then like, okay, now you're qualified. It wasn't like he knew that like the night before. So, all of his preparation would have been for, I need to beat Rune today to qualify, up until like a couple hours before. And that, changing your mindset or your mentality at that point, I think is also kind of, a little bit difficult to do. And at the end of the day, he also doesn't want to let a head-to-head with Rune get away from him. He didn't want to be 3-0 against Rune. And he probably fancied, himself having 3 straight victories going into the semifinal in the number 1 spot. And maybe there's also a part to say that he wasn't even really thinking about that. And he was just focused on trying to win this tennis match and the money associated with that. But, we kind of talked about it in the last podcast. It was like, if he won that group stage match, like, would you really fancy playing him again in the final? And the answer is probably no. Like, you know that you're probably not going to beat the guy twice in 1 week. And, but that's such a difficult question to know what he's thinking. But my guess would be that he's someone that kind of has a lot of integrity and only cares about his controllables and what he's going to do and kind of his records and his stats and all of those types of things. And so I don't think he would have even had that conversation with Darren Cahill of like, should we like, maybe throw in some random strategic stuff today and like see how it goes. Like, I just don't think he was in that frame of mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably thought about it for a second and then probably turned away from it because he was there in front of his home crowd of 10,000 fans cheering him on. He walked out with a kid who said, "Let's go Jannik" before the match started, and that's kind of what. Yeah, it was very cute. And that's what tennis is all. I mean, listen, once he's down 3-4 break point, his back is hurting, he can barely walk. I'm just like, okay, Jannik, calm down. It's okay. It's okay, Jannik. But in general, I think he probably would have thought about it for a second. Then he said, no, I don't want to go down 0-3 against Rune. It's not going to help my confidence very much. I certainly don't want Novak to think I don't want to play him going to 2024. So I think that there are also motivations in that way. 200 ranking points were still on the line. And I think that Jannik thought about it. And I think he knew that, okay, well, maybe this will backfire on me. But he said, you know what? I'm here to play a tennis match. I'll play a tennis match. And that's kind of what happened. So, but yeah, it was an interesting tournament anyway. Lot of 3-set matches. There were a lot of 3-set matches, and it was I felt like it was a very fitting way to end the 2023 season because we did see a lot of really close matches, especially between the top 4 players throughout the season. Mm-hmm. We saw the same thing happen at this event, but it was Novak throughout the whole season who was winning the big matches, the big events for the most part, and he ended up supreme over everybody. People are getting close. Like I said, Jannik did beat him at this tournament, so it'll be interesting to see Jannik versus Novak next year because Jannik's not going to have to beat him twice at an event. He'll just have to beat him once, luckily for Jannik. And so
and in best of 5 too, which is a different beast as well. I do think that is worth keeping in mind. Novak in best of 5, Sinner in best of 5, like that might be where we start to see fatigue and age creep in as a factor at slams, which I think is another kind of interesting thing about this tournament too, is the court conditions here was unlike any court conditions we've seen all year. I mean, this court was clearly so much faster than any other surface that they've played on. And yes, we had 3-set matches. Djokovic had 3-set matches in all of his round robin group stages. But even then, it's not like we were seeing at the US Open where like we had a couple of like hour and a half long sets. Like the sets were about an hour or less a lot of the time, which does have a huge impact on your body, total time on court, etc. And so I think that would be the one little thing like to be curious about, because in the past, Djokovic has been someone that's so good at 5 sets because his fitness is so good and his mentality is so good. I'm wondering if maybe 5 sets might be where we see a different shift in terms of the level from the other players, or if it's like Sinner, can't possibly get 3 sets off of Djokovic in one match. Like that's too much of an ask. Like I think those are kind of still question marks in those types of head-to-heads where maybe the ATP Finals doesn't give us the best insight into what that type of match, for example, at the upcoming Australian Open might look like.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of interesting questions that you posed there. I mean, Alcaraz said it. It was the first time that Alcaraz played this event, also the first time that Sinner or Rune played this event. Or Sinner played it before, but he played as an alternate. First time all three of them qualified. And Alcaraz was complaining, listen, the court surface is insane. It's playing so fast, much quicker than the rest of the year. I think a lot of people took issues with that because it's going to get boring if everything's the exact same surface. But then I kind of understood what Alcaraz was saying. I think what Alcaraz was saying was that it was like, why is everything else so not like, why is everything so different from this? Not like if there was more like this, then it would be fine. But it was just like, there's this one extremely quick surface and then everything else is much slower. So I think overall, it could be a sign to make the rest of the tour or more of the rest of the tour more similar to this in terms of the court speed, to get that more variety while not making this some kind of insane outlier, because we actually saw the same thing last year. We saw so many tiebreakers at 2022 Turin. I remember as well. So I think it's just the thing of this court speed. But I think Novak is even better in best of five. I think that's scarier for the rest of everybody. I think best of five. I think he has it down, even though he shouldn't logically. I think he kind of has the best of five because, like you said, it's so hard to win 3 sets against him. He usually finds a way to peak. He's not always playing at his best tennis. He can drop a set. He can drop a set or two. But to drop 3 sets in one match when Novak is so good at winning the big points and finding the right times to peak is just so difficult. He can lose the first 2 sets and come back. He's shown that multiple times over the last 3 years, which is okay. He showed that against Jannik at Wimbledon last year. He's shown it a lot of times. So I think best of 5 is even tougher, even though it really shouldn't be. Next year is 37, but I still think that guys will have an easier time winning 2 sets rather than 3 sets against Novak.
Yeah, and that'll be kind of the interesting point to see if that's where tables start to turn for him and he struggles, or if that's, going to kind of continue to be his bread and butter and where he, as you say, scares people the most in those types of situations. So, and then I guess like some of the other kind of takeaways from the tournament, I mean, I think the group with Medvedev and Alcaraz and Zverev, those had some kind of interesting dynamics in that group too, because Zverev did win 2 out of his 3 matches, but didn't end up qualifying, which is kind of the tricky aspect of these round robin type of group stage matches.
Yeah. I thought Zverev actually played very good tennis. He was serving very well against Alcaraz. They played a great match against Rublev, even though it was a dead rubber. It was not the best week from Rublev though, who went down 0-3, didn't even win a set of tennis. I saw that was the first time that happened since David Ferrer in 2010, where you didn't win a single set at the tour in ATP Finals. So a long while. Poor Rublev. Just couldn't find this week to end off what was also an incredible season. I mean, I know it was an amazing season for the top 4 guys, but this was Rublev's best season of his career. He won his first Masters. He got to 3 major quarterfinals. He had the most wins he ever had on a season. He had an incredible win percentage. Very disappointing ending. And I wasn't particularly happy to see it. And I don't know. I think like maybe the court speed really doesn't play in Rublev's favor, which again goes to my theory that it's not always the fast hitting guys that play the best on fast surfaces or the grinding guys that play well on slow surfaces. Rublev, I don't know, this week on the faster indoors just really couldn't find it. And even last year, I remember he played a pretty poor semifinal to end it off. Had a couple tight wins against guys that also I don't think were in their best form. But I feel like Rublev just really didn't find the best form this week, which was unfortunate because it capped off. Well, it was a pretty good season for him at the end of the day, or a really good season even. Yeah,
that was a shame to see those performances kind of be, I guess, a lasting memory of his 2023 season, but as you say, it shouldn't be. He's had a strong performance this year. He's made a lot of kind of adjustments and small improvements that have allowed him to pick up his first Masters title and be competitive in the slams. I think the same challenge still exists for him a little bit in terms of like, how does he adapt to different types of conditions? Like, can he add a little bit more variety? And I think you're right in saying that, the fastest courts aren't always for the fastest hitters or, kind of baseliners, the best type of condition. I think the fastest courts serve the best for the most elite servers on the tour. I think those are the people who take advantage of the fastest courts. And while Rublev, has a good serve, but we wouldn't put him in an elite tier of server. And so, I think it's been hard for him to have effective point construction behind the serve this week. And kind of, again, we can raise the question of like where his mentality has been at, and kind of this negativity that does seem to follow him sometimes. He freaks out in Grand Slams at the quarterfinal stages when he's losing, because he's like, oh god damn it, I'm losing again in a quarterfinal. And we see these kind of emotional responses. And then this week, we saw again him hitting his racket into his knee till his knee bleeds. I mean, even Kyrgios on commentary was like, geez, like, give yourself a break, man. Like, it's not that bad. In his post-match press conferences, like, he didn't even sign any autographs for fans, which is something he's usually known for doing. Even after he loses a match, he was, straight in the locker room. His press conference was very down. He was very negative. It was all about, I'm so disappointed in my performance and I played so horribly. And that was after the first match versus Medvedev. And you sort of thought that could follow you into the next match. You're playing the next day, and you have one day off in between in the group stages. And I mean, I just felt like he brought that same attitude against Zverev in the next match, or sorry, Alcaraz in the next match. I just think he wasn't in a positive frame of mind, and therefore didn't put himself in a kind of good mental state to be able to get a set off of one of these guys who he has beaten this year and like should be able to get sets off of. And I don't know. I think for me, that's the biggest thing I would love to see him work on, because he is such a good player and he has so many weapons. I mean, there was that funny quote from Tsitsipas this year of, Rublev is one-dimensional and he can only do one type of thing, which is hit the crap out of the ball. Like, we've seen he has some variety. Like, he can play, more than just power tennis. But I think for me, his biggest hindrance is his mentality, and it showed again this week. And I think as long as he kind of continues having that type of attitude on the court and being so hard on himself, it's just going to be hard to progress from here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw the opposite side of the spectrum in terms of the mental side. One guy won the event, the other guy went 0-3. It was Rublev and it was Djokovic. Djokovic performed absolutely phenomenal on the mental side, and Rublev just was very poor. And like you said, I do think like Rublev has the variety. It was Tsitsipas saying Rublev has few tools and whatever, but I think Rublev does have the variety. He showed it in the Monte Carlo final a lot. I mean, a lot of drop shot lob combinations, a lot of slices, being able to grind out from the back, switch position. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Rublev is a sign of talent to be able to whack the shit out of the ball every time he hits the ball. It's like that's a sign of talent to be able to hit forehand after forehand, keep generating more and more pace, even at big shots coming towards you. So I want to see Rublev figure it out, because if you don't come into a match with a positive mindset, it's not going to turn positively towards you, because of the small margins that we spoke about earlier, and just because you're alone out there. You don't have a team to support you or back you up. And that's why I want him to get a team off court that's supporting and can get him out of that mindset, because if not, I agree with you. I don't think he's ever going to get to major semifinal, which is where he belongs to get to with the tools that he does possess. So it's just unfortunate, and I hope he figures that out. And actually, it's a good question. Do you think Andre will make it to a major semifinal? And what do you think is the peak for him that he can get to?
That's a good question. I think in the state that he's currently in, to me, it would take an opening in the draw for him to be able to get to the semifinal. Some sort of result that favors him, a Djokovic losing early, or one of these more elite guys, losing early in his bracket and being able to take advantage of a situation like that. I think right now, his ranking kind of matches up like where he is, and it's not top 4 for me. Like, he's not I would pick, Sinner to make a major semifinal next year more often than I would pick Rublev to make his first major semifinal. And I think right now I would fancy Zverev over Rublev in 5 sets on these types of surfaces and conditions. And I think it's kind of going back to what I said, like, unless there's a mentality change from him and he takes some of this pressure off and he stops with this physical abuse, then I think maybe we'll see an opportunity for him to flourish and to reach his full potential. But right now, I would not think that he's going to make a semifinal next year.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting comment because he is a player of or I think the comment that he needs an opening in the draw to make it is interesting because he's a player that's very consistent. I think it's against the top guys where he gets the most frustrated, which is probably part of why that showed up so much this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true as well. But I think he can keep getting to those positions, but he does need to improve the mental side, or else he's just not going to win one of those matches against the top guys.
Yeah.
So I do agree that he needs an opening. I don't know about next year, but I do think that he will reach a major semifinal. But I hope we see a shift in mentality. I think we saw a shift in mentality, particularly at the start of the year, to be honest. Like I said, a good comeback in the Monte Carlo final. He had a lot of great matches earlier in the year. He had I think 2 or 3 matches in Dubai where he saved match points. He was showing a much better kind of fighter spirit about him. To start the year, he was much more positive. Towards the end of the year, he got a lot more negative. So hopefully next year is another mentality shift. He'll definitely need it if he wants to get over the line against one of those top guys. And those top guys are the guys who can kind of expose the fact that he has too few tools in the toolbox as well.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we can be critical, towards the end of the season. There's a lot going on with players off the court that maybe we don't see. That mental exhaustion creeps in and, leaves room for those types of, outbursts. As you say, he's playing the best players. It's going to be when he's feeling the most frustrated and the most kind of, maybe angry with himself, but maybe he could flip the mentality of these are the top 8 players in the world and that they're all really freaking good. And so let's just play. Let's play. Let's have some fun. Let's not freak out, and let me play my best tennis too. And whoever wins, wins. I mean, I feel like he just constrains himself from being able to play with freedom and problem solve because he's spending so much time freaking out. And you never know what's going on in his personal life, kind of what his mental capacity is, because again, kind of go back to this conversation of what makes a player super elite. And, with Alcaraz towards the second part of the season, his physical capacity reached the limit. And maybe with Rublev, he reaches this sort of mental capacity that he's not able to overcome. And those things can equally be worked on. And I just don't think we see the most elite players be productive with that type of mindset or that type of mentality unless they are born with serious natural talent. And even then, I would think of someone like Kyrgios in that situation, and he hasn't won a Grand Slam. Yes, he's made a final, but he didn't have to play the semifinal either, by the way. So, it's I think it's one of those things I would love to see him change or adjust because he so deserves it as a person and as a player. But right now, I don't think he's doing himself any favors. And I do think it's also worth the conversation of he's not really setting a really good example, because we saw Djokovic smash a couple rackets this week versus Rune, and it caught him some heat. And I'm not usually someone that's going to always defend Djokovic and be in his corner. But I'm sympathetic to players smashing rackets. And I know we've talked about this before too, watching, for example, Casper Ruud, where I'm bro, just break the racket, okay? Get mad, break the racket, get it out, and come back and reset. And, this week, we don't associate it with Djokovic all the time, but a couple times this season, he has these moments. And that outburst, the breaking of the 2 rackets, reset him. He came out and he started playing great tennis after the fact. And so sometimes you have these little mental snaps, but he got a lot of criticism in terms of hey, that's not a good example to set for young kids, etc., etc. I would actually point to the way that Rublev treats himself as being a worse example, because we're tolerating somebody physically hurting themselves out of frustration. And I would way rather my player, if I was a coach, just smashes the racket. I mean, I would way rather that. I think it must do something to you, mentally and physically, to be making yourself bleed on the court. And I think it's concerning. And I would hope that's, kids don't watch that and think that's a good way to act on court, because I certainly wouldn't want to see my player doing that.
Yeah, well, it's certainly not a healthy release because, well, first of all, it can actually hinder you physically if you're hurting your knee and then you have to go back to running. It's a little bit worrying. But then also, like you say, you need to vent out the frustration somehow. It's not a good example because, listen, not every kid can afford to buy 10 rackets and you don't know where the racket's going to go, et cetera, et cetera. That's whatever. It's professional. They're playing for entertainment. It's like, okay, smash a racket. That's fine. Crowds actually get excited when you smash a racket. Tennis TV flies away with it. They love it when a player smashes a racket. They put up compilations of it. But for some reason, there are abuse warnings. When Rublev is doing it on himself, there's nothing said. And I'm not saying that to poke fun at Rublev. I actually feel really bad for the guy. And I know that you do as well. I want him to get the help that he deserves. I want him to not do that because it's no fun to watch. As a player, if at the end of the day this is a product for people to come to watch to be able to even keep this thing going, I don't want to see a guy who's very kind in interviews and very nice smashing himself with a racket on the knee. It's not something that's particularly enjoyable to me to watch, and it's not a good example. It's also not good for him as a player, mainly because he's hurting his knee and he needs to go back to running, I think, which is not very good. So, he needs to change it, and I think that also. I don't know. I would think even the idea of possibly considering a warning for that might be a good thing at the end of the day because it's not a very healthy thing to promote for fans and players. But at the end of the day, more than anything, I just hope that he changes that for himself and for the fans as well. Before we move on from this kind of ATP Finals section, we've had so many good rivalries for the last few years. For the last few months, and we had so many good rivalries at play in this tournament. What do you think are the top 3 rivalries on the men's tour at the moment? I want to ask you if you could order it.
Good question. I think the top rivalry of the year for me has been Alcaraz and Djokovic. They've produced some absolutely spectacular matches. That Wimbledon final will be unforgettable. The Cincinnati finals, unforgettable for me. So many of their matches have been so tight, so nail-biting, and produced some of the best highlight reels from the season. So that would be my number 1 pick. I think my number 2 pick would be Sinner and Alcaraz because, again, their matchup and head-to-head has produced some of the most exciting storylines. Their head-to-head is so even. Their matchup is so kind of long-standing. I love the history of it from when they were kids to now. I mean, they're still kids, basically, but, that they're doing it at the highest level at the best tournaments. Miami was incredible. And I think that it's a rivalry that also just has legs for the future on different surfaces as well. So much potential for that rivalry to grow. And so I think that one brings me a lot of joy and a lot of excitement. And number 3, it's interesting because I might throw Medvedev Sinner in there, but I might also throw Medvedev Zverev because they've played more than 15 times this season or something. And
that's an interesting
Medvedev, had kind of the better of Zverev for a number of these matches in a row. And then I think Zverev asked Alcaraz for some tips or something. And then all of a sudden Zverev caught a couple wins against Medvedev. And I do think Medvedev has the upper hand on Zverev in terms of their matchup, but they kind of don't like each other, and they kind of have often a little bit of bullshit happen in their matches where they kind of get angry, and Medvedev does Medvedev things to try and piss him off, and Zverev kind of is the type of guy that bites on that and gets annoyed by it, and from that perspective it's interesting. But also Medvedev Sinner has been such a good matchup over the last couple of months because Sinner's turned the head-to-head around. I think prior to the last 3 matches, that wouldn't have been a fun rivalry because Sinner didn't win any. So, I think I would actually put Medvedev and Zverev in my number 3 spot for now.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I have the same number 1. It's got to be Djokovic Alcaraz because Wimbledon was historic and it was also an anomaly for so many reasons, and Alcaraz produced some of the most amazing tennis. He has the highest win rate on grass courts for his first 20 matches of anybody ever. He's figured out the grass super quickly, which nobody expected him to do already this year. And they bring amazing tennis out of each other. It's the GOAT versus the youngster. It's a very interesting storyline as well. But for number 2, I've got actually for number 2, I was thinking about this earlier. I have Sinner versus Medvedev for number 2. I think it's an amazing matchup when both of them are playing their best. I thought they played an amazing final in Vienna. That was absolutely spectacular. And I think that it's a very contrast of styles. And I think that now that Jannik has really upped his level to consistently be at the level that Medvedev is at his best, and especially in a head-to-head standpoint, and improved on the serve as well, I think that is a matchup that is just so engaging and so fun to watch between two talented guys who Medvedev plays so unorthodox, but Sinner can match that and has to he doesn't really change his strategy at all from how he usually plays. He just maxes out in his own game. And both of them do the same thing. They don't really ask each other to change anything about each other's game. They just ask each other to max out on how they play. And so far, and in their last 3 matches, Sinner is just absolutely maxed out to the extreme. At number 3, I have Sinner versus Alcaraz as well. This is my honorary number 1, to be honest. They didn't play that many matches this year, but I think Sinner Alcaraz is the rivalry for the future. I think Alcaraz asked Sinner to bring out his most variety from his game, asked him to be very impressive on the serve. Alcaraz and Sinner asks Alcaraz to be able to find a way to be aggressive and dictate to his very best and find his best shot making at a very quick kind of pace and step forward and not be pushed back behind the baseline. They really test each other, challenge each other. Every game is close. Recently, Sinner's really improved the serve, and I think that's kind of changed that a little bit. But back in the there'd be so many breaks in all of their matches. Every game would be tense and tight. So that's something that those would be my top 3. But I'd also throw a curveball in there of Tsitsipas versus Medvedev. I think that's a fun matchup. You mentioned, you mentioned the drama element, which is just it's such a good story. Miami 2018, but before both guys got to top 10 in the world at all, they have a huge fight there, and then they just really don't like each other, to be honest.
They hate each other.
They hate each other. They don't like and I don't like it when people pretend. I mean, I think a good part. I think that's a good part of rivalry that keeps it compelling. Yeah. And I think it's healthy as long as whatever. I think it's fine. And I think it's exciting when they get on the court. And also, I think that last year Tsitsipas made the rivalry super interesting with a couple close matches in Cincinnati and also ATP Finals, which were very good. He was using the serve and volley tactic a lot, which Medvedev seems to hate when you can serve and volley. Tsitsipas started out on the tour a bit, throwing the serve and volley a lot. When he broke through against Federer, he used the serve and volley, I believe, over 50 times in that match. So he's a guy who can do that pretty well, and he was really testing out Medvedev, who was standing so far back. And I don't know, this year Medvedev beat him in Monte Carlo, beat him on clay, which is just not something you'd expect from Medvedev Tsitsipas, which is just wild. Yeah, you forget about Rome semis and final, Medvedev winning in Rome. He said he forgot about it too. But they've really spiced up their rivalry from an off-court standpoint and an on-court standpoint. And listen, I'll just say this. I like it when guys are like, whatever, super nice to each other. That's why Sinner Alcaraz is probably one of my favorite rivalries at the moment. But I don't mind if 2 guys don't like each other. That just spices up the rivalry more. I love it too. I think everybody loves it. I think that I don't like, and as much as it might be good in some ways for the top players to warm up with each other, I kind of like it when when players keep their secrets from each other, don't necessarily warm up before an event as well. I'm not necessarily throwing shade on that, but I like it when 2 guys are just, you know what, they just want to do their all to win against each other. They don't care about the niceties off the court or whatever like that. So, I don't think anybody has to like anybody, I think it's a strange expectation that some people have with tennis, and it goes hand in hand with like some of the etiquette we've talked about before as well. Like, why does tennis always have to be super nice? Like, be a good sportsman, this and that. Like, I love it when Kyrgios comes around and just winds people up just to be like, why not? Like, why do I have to play that way? Like, why can't I try and get in your head and do stuff that's gonna
get under your skin and poke you
Yeah.
a little bit. I mean, like, why not? And I think it's good for the sport. And I love that they take the piss out of each other too. I mean, like, they make fun of each other, and like, why not? You know, at the end of the day, you got to shake hands and say well played, and you can't sit in a press conference and shit talk somebody the whole time. But by no means do you have to act like you like them either. I love it when they hate each other.
No, yeah, and it's just a genuine way to be a human, especially when you're especially when you're playing for 3 hours under stress, under lights, in front of a huge crowd, and you have to prepare the whole season, play day in, day out, week in, week out. Yeah, you're not always going to feel like being a perfect human, and that's fine. You're not going to always be a perfect person. We love it. We love it.
Yeah,
I think it's good for the sport. It keeps up the motivations high, and it adds an extra element in that's super compelling. Listen, when Tsitsipas and Kyrgios played that match at Wimbledon last year, nobody was saying, "Man, this sucks." Who was watching that match and said, "This sucks"? Who watched that match and said, "This is bad"? Everyone loved it because it was a chaos show.
Anyone who was a tennis purist, anyone who, you know, maybe was over the age of 70 and doesn't think that, you know, you can do all this and all that, and hitting an underarm serve is offensive. And, you know, it's like, I agree with you. Nobody from a younger generation watches that match and thinks I wasn't entertained.
Yeah.
And that to me is the biggest answer in general with Kyrgios, is like, but you were entertained. Like, you watched that and you wanted to talk more about tennis because you watched that. Like, you thought it was interesting. And I want more matches like that. I mean, that match to me was hilarious. It was gripping. Like, one of the most memorable matches of 2022. And it wasn't like it was the best tennis in the world either. It was just, it was a shit show.
And we're still talking about it. It's almost 2024 as well.
Exactly.
So it's like,
I miss Kyrgios. Come back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, you want, as long as they're, like, you know, not completely going insane on line judges that haven't really done anything to them. Aside from something like that, as long as it's just, you know, pretty harmless drama on the court, some kind of mix up, it's good. We like it. We're entertained by it, and that's kind of what counts at the end of the day. Tennis thrives on entertainment. Listen. When something dramatic happens in any sports, that's what kind of gets it going. Tennis, I guess, is renowned for being a beautiful sport. I don't see why it can't be a beautiful sport and also people freaking out on the court and getting all of our eyes to look at ESPN while tennis matches are going on. Why can't both things happen? Actually, I think it brings out the best of tennis, because tennis is like this beautiful kind of game, but it's also extremely physical, extremely challenging, and also it creates a lot of drama and a lot of good stories, a lot of personalities. I think that's what makes tennis super exciting. Because sometimes I compare tennis a little bit to UFC or boxing, and I know that sounds like a weird comparison, but I think it's very viable. I think that it's two guys throwing their all out there, all of it out there, mentally, physically, onto the court, and against another guy. It's one-on-one. You only have yourself to rely on. And I think that like UFC, sometimes the drama spices that up. And I think that what draws me to tennis is it's like UFC, but it's just fun to watch. It's a beautiful game, and it's two guys going head to head. And I don't see why it takes away from the, I don't know, more unique kind of, I keep saying this word, but beautiful parts of tennis, of what makes it so aesthetically pleasing to watch. But compared to the rest of it, I think it's good. And I don't see what's wrong with it. It keeps it just as entertaining.
And as you say, we have it in other sports. You have it in UFC, where personal rivalries between fighters makes things more interesting. I mean, the build up in a pre-match fight, the more they, hate on each other and have bullshit to say, the more people tune in and want to watch the match. It's part of the show. It's part of the art and entertainment of it at the end of the day. And I also think, every other sport we watch and engage with, even if it's team sports, you have other teams that you hate. You have your huge rivalries, and you don't see NFL players like, going into a match like, oh, like, love you, dude. Like, yeah, let's like practice and warm up together, and like, let's hang out before the match, and like, yeah, let's like take the same car, and like, whatever, these guys are sitting in the locker room. They're like, I'm gonna kill this guy, like, and they're gonna like, I'm running through him. I don't care. Like, I'm taking your left leg off. Like, it's brutal. And I think of that. I'm a big Chelsea fan, a football fan, and the rivalry and anger and hatred I feel around when we play Tottenham, and that gets me going. It's exciting, and repeatedly each year, that is one of the best matches in the Premier League, because those two teams and those two fan bases hate each other, and it brings out the craziest football every time. And I think the same thing with tennis. The more that we can, align with different players' personalities and get people to follow players outside of just like who's won the last, however many Grand Slams. Like, let's align with people whose personalities you like. Like, I don't know, I want to know more about the dramas between the players. Like, what's gone on between Tsitsipas and Medvedev? Like, can Breakpoint like cover that a little bit? Like, I want to know like what happened. Like, I'd love to kind of have more of the meat and the juice and the gossip. We don't get that in tennis. And I'm, it's always like, how'd the match go? And, what do you think of so-and-so's game?
Yeah.
No, I want more.
Yeah, and it's like the same comments during the post-match interviews as well. I want to know what the players are thinking. I want to get to the best way of finding out what the players are thinking. Like, I love what, like, Ultimate Tennis Showdown, like the interviews between the players there, where they're just really being down to earth and just talking amongst each other. It just feels like there's not even a camera on them. They're just speaking. That's what we need more of. We need that kind of format for players to really engage. And tennis is such a good, kind of, what's the word? It's such a good it's such a good outlet to it's such a good outlet to look at players' personalities a little bit deeper under the microscope, because you see them on a tennis court, and that would just engage people better. I mean, it's just a one-on-one sport, and you see a lot of personality in tennis. Nobody plays tennis exactly the same way. Nobody treats the way they go about the game exactly the same way, and you see a lot of their personalities in tennis. I think it would be really great to make the most of it. And sometimes their personalities, their mental game make the difference in tennis. It's a lot of it is what tennis is. And I think we're just limiting it by taking away the negative aspects of what make people human. Because at the end of the day, sport is an escape. It's like, I mean, sport is an escape at the end of the day. There's much worse stuff than Tsitsipas and Kyrgios bickering at each other and trying to hit each other with the ball in the tennis match. There's much worse stuff going on in the world. It's like if we make a big deal out of that, then there's a million other things going on in the world that not to talk about.
Yep.
I mean, it just doesn't really make much sense to me, and I wish that we were willing to accentuate that part of it rather than hide away from it. And it does make much sense for me. I think it's just what people are used to, but it's just going to keep the sport from growing. It doesn't make sense to a larger audience, and it's just limiting what will bring people more and more eyes to the sport and to different players. The sport needs different players and star power, and the sport also needs good rivalries, and that creates good rivalries to me.
Yeah, my conclusion to that is tennis is too sensitive and too soft, and people need to get down with being dirty sometimes.
I agree, and that's what sports is about. Right. And we're trying to get tennis on board too. All right, and so for the power ranking segment of the podcast, we have Davis Cup next week, but this is kind of the last kind of power rankings of the main kind of ATP WTA season, and Djokovic still at the top. He is winning everything. He's won every single tournament since Wimbledon. He lost a match this week to Jannik, but then he beat him in the final very comfortably. So no possible change to the top two. Djokovic and Sinner are the best two players in the world at the moment. But then after that, I had Medvedev go up a spot. I had Alcaraz move up a bit. Rublev dropped down 4 because he lost all 3 matches this week. He didn't win a single set. Rublev had a poor week, as we talked about earlier. And yeah, I mean, all the changes, nothing really that substantial in the changes because, like I said, Medvedev, Alcaraz, Djokovic, Sinner, they've been the best players in the world. Djokovic and Sinner just acting upon what we've seen the last few weeks in Paris, in Vienna, in Beijing. They reached the finals of the ATP Finals. Medvedev and Alcaraz have been playing really well all year too. They've done well as well. Rublev drops down. Rune comes in. Tsitsipas falls out of my top 10. Rune comes in because even though Rune lost 2 matches this week, the other match was a retirement from Tsitsipas. I felt like he played pretty good tennis, so I think that I felt like Rune definitely deserves to be in the top 10. Do you want to? What were your power ranking changes?
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly to you. I had Rune a little higher up because I felt like he really did push Djokovic and he gave Sinner a good match as well. I've seen improvements from him since the last couple of weeks, and yeah, his level hasn't been great since Wimbledon, but he has had an injury and some coaching changes, and transitioning, kind of figuring out how to back up results from, a good year on tour and into the year last year. So, a little bit higher, but pretty much the same. And I still had Tsitsipas inside my top 10. I mean, overall, I've been disappointed with him in terms of his season, but he started the year, decently well, and then it tapered off. And, ultimately he did what he needed to do to qualify this year again for the ATP Finals, an impressive feat, even without kind of making progress at the slams in terms of winning a slam. He still was able to get the points and run deep enough, where he needed to be amongst the top players in the world. And just unfortunate for him that, an injury popped up this late in the game and he wasn't able to show us his best tennis. But I thought there were some positive signs from the previous tournaments that things were starting to adjust and look a little bit better for him. So hopefully that whatever he picked up isn't some sort of new major injury that will hamper him at the start of next year. He has a lot of work to do, a lot of things to think about in the off season, but still worthy of a top 10 place in terms of performances throughout the year. And he's been in and amongst it.
Yeah, I think all of that's true. I don't have much more to add than that. I think we might see a different top 10 a little bit next year as opposed to the top 10 we have now, because we have had a couple of guys that aren't really performing. I think we've struggled sometimes outside of these top 4 guys on the ATP side to pick who's going to be the top 5. I mean, Zverev and Rublev have done pretty well, but not really anybody super consistently outside of Sinner, Alcaraz, Medvedev, and Djokovic. So I think in some ways that's exciting, but whoever is in this kind of top 10 spot, I think that we're going to need the depth in the top 10 to kind of get a little bit better, and I hope we see that kind of happen. But yeah, these are kind of the year-end top 10 going into Davis Cup, where maybe something will change. I think both Sinner and Djokovic are planning to play Davis Cup, so that should be interesting as well. They might even play against each other, which would be a cool way to cap off the season like that. Yeah, nothing much more to say, but that is kind of the power rankings as it stands. I had Dimitrov in the 5th spot, you have Zverev, but both those kind of make sense in their own kind of separate way.
Yeah, and then moving for WTA, looks like, we haven't had kind of too many additions or movers here. I looked at this or approached this as, again, kind of like the year over power rankings as opposed to just like the last couple of weeks, who I think is going to be competitive in 2024. And I added Vondrousova back to my list there because, she is the Wimbledon champion. I do think she has shown in her game that she's able to cause problems for the most elite players. Do I think she'll back up her Wimbledon title? I do not. But I do think she'll be in and amongst that, top 15 to top 10 next year and continue to, have a couple good runs if she's able to stay healthy. Same thing with a nod adding Mukova back into my list. She had a great run to the WTA Finals and then unfortunately wasn't able to compete. Another injury kind of added to her list, which is the biggest question mark with Mukova because it's certainly not her skill set and her game. I mean, she's got such a complete game. She's a phenomenal athlete, and when she's healthy, she can win slams for sure. I think the biggest question for her is her health. And then, I was kind of struggling who to put in my number 10 spot. I know that Zachary, would definitely be someone that's kind of in contention there. But I overall was disappointed with Zachary's season. Her Grand Slam performances for me just weren't quite good enough. Just the one title in Guadalajara that really was quite a weekend field. And she's just not shown the progress that I would like to see from her after being a top 10 player now for a couple of years. Like, she's top 15, but not top 10 for me. And the reason why I gave Kvitova the nod is, she picked up another Masters 1000 title, a couple of titles on the grass. She was top 8 by the time the grass season kind of came around. I mean, she's someone that, I think picks and chooses her tournaments a little bit more now. She's a veteran. She's obviously come back from also horrific personal event a couple of years ago that, really probably changed her trajectory in her career as well. and for her to get another Masters 1000 title and, really actually be competitive at a couple of these Masters tournaments. She was just outside of year-end top 10 rankings in general. And I think she just kind of doesn't have the gas in the tank to be able to play kind of a full or complete season. But when she is playing, is putting up fantastic numbers and great stats and is still competitive. So she's also a beloved player of mine, and I'm so happy to see her have a couple of wins this year. So put her in my top 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, I was very happy to see Petra win in Miami, stopping the Sunshine Double from Rybakina. I felt like she played some of the best tennis maybe I've seen her play, and kind of that swing. Probably a disappointing Wimbledon, but still a good season overall. Kind of a bad loss to Jabeur. Didn't hit a single winner in the first set against Ons and was really pretty poor all around. But aside from that, a good season. And Mukova is really good, but she just needs to kind of stay healthy and stay kind of on course and stay consistent. So, but when she peaks, she's very good, and we saw her almost take Roland Garros. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think WTA side and ATP side have both been quite good this year. The WTA came up with some really good rivalries. The Australian Open final kind of set the tone with Rybakina and Sabalenka. Then Swiatek at the finals kind of showed who's still top dog. She won the most titles. She won the most big titles. But it was a really good season with a lot of great matches throughout the season, namely Madrid final. You got the couple of semifinals of Jabeur versus Mukova, Sabalenka versus Mukova, Sabalenka versus Jabeur, Wimbledon, at Roland Garros, respectively. A lot of great matches throughout, and all of the top 8 players, aside from Pegula, reached a major final. Sabalenka got to 2. She was a great player in majors throughout the year, all 4 major semis. Pegula, she's going to reach a major semi at some point. I wasn't that as confident about Rublev, but Pegula is as mentally calm and consistent as you like, and I think I feel pretty confident that she's going to reach a major semi at some point, and probably a major final as well. So, and then on the ATP side, you can just go back to the rivalries talk. There's been a lot of great matches all year. But yeah, that's kind of the power rankings to end off the year. It's going to be interesting about 2024. And then real quick to go to the kind of culture segment of the podcast as well. WTA calendar was announced. I wasn't that excited about some of the scheduling, to be honest. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly pleased with it. I don't think the players are particularly pleased with it. I mean, again, kind of some of these confusing rules about top players being able to play 250 events, more of these Masters events being extended to kind of 2-week duration, and more requirements to participate in the majors, which I just think it's already too much tennis. So to make tennis even more mandatory than it is I don't, again, like, to me, it doesn't benefit the fan. It doesn't benefit the player. The only person it benefits is the broadcasting purse. And, I actually think that quality over quantity matters more in this sport. And I just don't think they seem to understand that. And, probably the biggest concern and the biggest question mark is there's no plan yet set forth for the 2024 WTA Finals. I think kind of the biggest, thing that people are watching out for is that we don't have a repeat of Fort Worth and we don't have a repeat of Cancun. And one of the ways to avoid a repeat of that is to have a plan in place a year in advance. So we know these things take time to organize and arrange and to execute on. And, unless this is something that's worked out in January, February, it'll be pretty unforgivable again. If we're not getting an announcement on finals until March, April, May time, it's just still not enough lead up time for that event. So I'm pretty disappointed there. And, I think probably still more to come. So in terms of what the WTA is doing, how things are taking shape, we still don't have an update on how talks went between the WTA and ATP in terms of a merger. That meeting happened in London at the end of September. There's no update. That there was also announcements last week about the ATP signing new deals with a Masters tournament to be held in Saudi, or them purchasing rights to host another Masters 1000s events. and no conversation or confirmation thus far as to whether that includes the WTA. And again, this sort of just fear of like, are we being left behind? You know, what do those conversations look like? Are we even a part of the conversation? And yeah, just again, these kind of general question marks around the leadership, the fact that a lot of these people have been in charge for a really long time. I think that it's important to keep things fresh, have rotation, have new talent, and most importantly, for a women's tennis organization to have more women involved and more former players involved in that decision making. I don't think the kind of hierarchy or organization structure right now is reflective of the people that they're meant to be representing, and that's a big issue. Not just from a gender perspective, but also from, you know, race and sexuality perspective. We don't have equal representation at the top of the game. And, you know, it's no wonder to me that then, you know, players don't feel supported and players don't feel heard. And it's something that needs to change. And hopefully there will be some sort of catalyst for that change in the next year.
Yeah, well, to start off with the finals, I mean, on the ATP side, we just had Turin announced over to 2027. It was a great venue for the year. We have the city announced, and then the WTA still hasn't announced for next year. And obviously, this year it was announced, I think, very late, like in April or May, and then there's a very late change, and it was all over the place and very messy. And I hope that kind of has a change around. And yeah, I mean. I remember a video that you posted on Instagram, actually, where I actually saw the head of the WTA, because I'd never seen that. So you kind of put the research in, and you made two great points. First of all, I think there were only one or two women at the who were managing, and nearly every single person was white, and that's not something that you want to see, because that doesn't represent a lot of the players on the tour at the moment. And it's just like that's. There's a lot of perspectives not being understood, and so I definitely think that there needs to be a change at the end. I don't know, the scheduling doesn't make much sense at all. I still think on the ATP and the WTA side, the off season can be longer. I agree with you on quality over quantity. Sorry, it can be shorter. I agree with you on that. It's quality over quantity. I mean, off-season being shorter would also help players take time to improve their games and kind of take time to kind of preserve their bodies and get into the right training shape. And I just feel like it's just too much tennis. And I agree with you about the mandatory parts. Also, there are tournaments taking place in the same week. They're adding new masters, not things that a lot of people ask for. I think Ostrava is out. I think Washington is on the same week as the Olympics. There are other events that they took out that is very weird. Yeah. It's like the whole scheduling is a mess. They're not really. I think that there needs to be a change at the head, because it just doesn't seem like they're listening to what a lot of people need. They're making a lot of changes in tennis, but there's so many things to change for the better that they're just not looking at. It's like they're looking at this. Yeah. Well, there's like 100 things on the side that they need to be looking at, and it makes very little sense to me. And they're just adding more and more and more. Which is just so weird to me that they're not paying attention to the actual meat and bones of what they're changing, rather than just adding more and more and more events and stuff. So it's not so good, and I hope that changes. And to do with the finals, they need to find something probably now is better than ever.
They're running out of time already. They're already behind schedule, and I think they have a lot of questions to answer. Again, it goes back to this transparency question, you know, still questions to answer over what happened in Cancun. I think, as you say, that uncomfortable in terms of the way that representation looks at the, you know, top level of your organization. And it really does matter. And especially when we're talking about women's sports, where we've seen for example, like the WNBA or the NWSL, like they've been super intentional and super conscious about, like, you know, we need representation in these areas. And it really matters to us that, you know, we have all of these different types of point of views reflected. You know, for example, if the conversation with Saudi is coming up, do you have people in leadership positions who are able to reflect the concerns and opinions of your gay athletes? Because we have more openly gay athletes on the WTA than we do on the ATP side. And maybe that's even more of a concern for gay females or, women who are going to Saudi Arabia, where being gay is, not something that's allowed. And being a woman is already something that, requires you to be, wear a headscarf or be more covered or be careful about, how you interact with men when you're in these countries out of respect for their culture. But at the same time, like you have these types of athletes on the tour who travel with their girlfriends, who have, who are in relationships with women. Like, how are you going to take care of them and make sure that their opinions and feelings are heard if they're not even in the top of your boardroom and the top of your leadership? And then on top of that, you add, ethnicity and race into the conversation in terms of how might somebody, feel in these types of environments or different locations. Are they equally supported? Are the press asking them appropriate questions? Like all of these kind of, types of things. And you look at the makeup of what the WTA board and leadership looks like, and it's not diverse one bit. It's concerning. And I think that they're only hindering their own progress. They have a good product, as we've discussed before, and they have the right storylines and they have amazing players. But they have really poor leadership, really poor organization, really poor marketing, a really low marketing budget for what they do. And I think that the sooner they get new ideas, new blood into what feels like is becoming a pretty stale organization with people who've been in charge for far too long. I mean, you don't want people in charge for 15 years. I'm sorry. Like, life moves on. People's consumer habits move on. You want representatives from new generations. You want fresh ideas. You want to keep evolving. And I just don't think their leadership structure supports that whatsoever. They got a bunch of deals wrong with tennis TV, a couple of years ago as well. So, yeah, I'm concerned for what the WTA in terms of an organization will look like next year and kind of how that's all going to unfold. But I'm not concerned about the quality of the athletes or the players themselves.
Yeah. I agree with everything said, and I think we can finish off with that note, if that's all right with you. So this has been Tennis 360 Podcast. My name is Anthony Hirsch.
And I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
And I'll see you guys at the next one. Don't forget to like the pod if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Stick around for next week. There's a very exciting interview episode that we'll be covering as well, where we got to interview a professional player on the tour. That'll be all coming next week as well. So stay tuned for Quality Shot Tennis during the off season. And see you guys at the next one.
See you guys.